What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the final episode. So, in this episode, we're going to be talking about exporting your project as a game. So, this is going to be done from the editor. It's not going to be done from your IDE. It can only be done from the editor after it's built. So, I guess another thing that I had to do was I had to add GL enable, GL alpha test, GL alpha func, GL greater 0.1f. What this is doing is it's just saying that any pixels that are being rendered that have an alpha value lower than zero point 0.1, then we're just going to discard that pixel. And I had to add that because I thought that I had written this the same as I wrote my last 2D engine, which there was no issue with alpha testing and stuff like that because of the way that I wrote it. And I thought I wrote it the same way, but apparently I did not. So whenever I do live streaming, I'm gonna have to go back and fix that, and then I can actually just remove this. So basically, you all of your textures at this moment in time has to either have no alpha or full alpha. So either 1 or 0. If it's anything greater than 0.1f, it's going to try to render it. But as you can tell from the previous episodes, that doesn't work that great. And if it's lower than 0.1, say 0.025, it's just going to discard it. So I went ahead and removed the semi-transparency out of the textures that I was using for the reference scene. So now there's no semi-transparency. I mean, besides like the edges or whatever, but that's whatever. So as you can tell, like right here, I removed that, and since it's full alpha around the character, we don't have that big blue block from it rendering the other color. So that at least fixes it for now until I go through and redo that. Well, not really redo it, but change the way it works. And that is inside of the render class and the render method. Alright, so there's tons of things that I have changed. And I just realized that I don't even have my lights on, but whatever. There's, as you can tell, a lot of things I had to change. All these classes up here, I've changed something in them. Now let's see here. This is new right here. And that says new, but I think we covered that in the last episode. Okay, so inside of the scene manager, one of the things that we need to do is actually call the start method. Because we were calling it somewhere else, but we don't need to call it there. Let's see here, I'm just trying to see if there's anything I changed in here, and is not. All right, so right here we're just gonna loot, or like you already have this right here. We just need to add this go.start. And put that on there. And I believe that's actually it for scene manager. So that part's actually really easy. Or actually, no, it's not. This right here. This right here is new. So the way that we were doing scenes before was, I don't know why I did this before, but it was only importing from a file, from an external file. I didn't add the ability to actually load it from within the jar file. So how we did this is just did buffered reader br equals null instead of buffered reader br equals this crap. So I just move that over here, and then I'm writing if project settings dot is editor. Then I'm going to say here's the file writer and all this stuff right here. It's basically the same as anything else we load. I actually just copied it over and just changed this, added that slash, then changed that to .scene, debug.load, wait, scene blank wasn't loaded because it could not be found. Okay, so that was already there. That's the file import. I don't know what I'm thinking. Yeah, so all this is the same up here. And I'm just saying br equals new buffered reader, which is this right here. And then here I'm saying else, so if it is not in the editor, then I'm going to do this right here. I'm going to say input stream reader, ISR equals new input stream reader, scene manager dot class dot get resource as stream, scenes name dot scene, same as up there. And then br equals new buffered reader, and then passing in the input stream reader. So that is pretty easy. Now you might be wondering what is project settings dot is editor. So all it is I added a boolean right here. So static boolean is editor. Here it's saying is editor equals editor. I added some stuff in here. You actually don't even need this BR really. All we need really is that boolean editor. Actually, I don't even think you need any of this because I don't think I actually call it. I think I set it from somewhere else. But yeah, that's all it is. Just a boolean. It starts out as true, and we set it somewhere else. All right, so that takes care of those. All right, now inside of the core class, we need to actually check if it should be a game or it should be an editor. And it's really, really simple. It's just this right here. This is actually going to tell us what kind of build it is. So we're saying input stream reader is equals core.class.get resource as stream slash, make sure you put the slash, and project.settings. So project.settings is basically just project settings. It'll just be in file format, but for right now, we're not really too worried about it. All we need is some kind of file inside of the jar that it's going to And if it exists, then it's a game. If it does not exist, then it is not a game. It is the editor. So we're not going to be actually writing anything inside of this settings file. You guys already know how to write a settings file. We've already gone over that, so there's no point in even going over that again. So we're saying if the input stream is null, then we're going to kick open the engine bootloader because, well, we're going to need to load the engine. Else, we're just going to call, oh, I did use that. We're just going to call project settings.load new buffered reader, new input stream reader is, and then pass in false. Now, the reason why I even have this here, even though we're not using it right now, is in the future how I'm going to do it is I'm going to pass in the buffered reader to the project settings script, and then it's going to read it in and load it from there. That's why I'm passing that in. And then right down here, before it was saying, I believe, just this right here, we actually need it to say this. So if project settings.isEditor, then we're going to render the editor. We don't want to render the editor if it is not supposed to be an editor, obviously. And I will actually, yeah, right here, really quick. I know I'm like getting off topic, but for now, I'm going to change this later because it's going to be inside of the project settings. We're actually going to have a starting scene thing so that we can actually change what the starting scene is from the editor. But for now, you can actually change the starting scene name to whatever you want. So whatever the starting scene is, just type it in there, and that'll work just fine. Okay, back on to what we're supposed to be doing. So now there is 3 different render types or render modes. We have if it is not an editor, if it is an editor but it's also playing, and then if it's the editor and it's not playing. Because if it's an editor and it's playing, we have that this bar up here, and we don't want to render that in the game. So that's the reason why we had to make a completely new one. And it's basically just exactly the same. So if not project settings.isEditor, we're just going to render it exactly the same as this. So you can copy, paste it, and change 30 to 0, and remove this -60. And that's all it is. And just make sure you use else if here, and then else there. And that will render it full screen if it's supposed to be a game. And I believe that is it for core. Let's see here. We also had to change how we import resources, because apparently I forgot to import assets that are outside of the jar, like external assets, if we're running a build of the editor. So one thing we had to do was down here in the import from jar method, I just added this right here, right at the very end. I'm just saying if project settings.is editor, then I basically just copy and pasted this right here. That's all I did from import directory. And that's all that does. Let's see here. We're not doing scenes. Scripts.import from external directory. I don't think there was anything else that I changed in here. I just want to be 100% positive that I'm not missing something. Editor util.import class. Okay. So another thing we had to change was how we prepared our objects. So all the way down at the bottom on prepare objects, then right here before it was saying if editor.isPlaying, but now we need to change it to if editor.isPlaying and or we're not, it's not an editor. And if all that's the same, that's the same, all that's the same. Right here at the end, before it just said previous frame equals editor.isPlaying, but instead it needs to be if project settings.isEditor, then we're going to set previous frame to equal editor.isPlaying. And if it's a game, we're just going to set it automatically to true. Up here on start all, we need to check if it's a game as well. So if it's not the editor, then we're going to say previous frame equals false. So after everything loads, we're just going to set previous frame to false. That way we can catch it down here. Update, destroy, no. Didn't change any of that. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff changed. Like normal, whenever I record stuff prior, it's because there's a lot of stuff going on. And I can't cram it into one episode. That is the difficult part about recording tutorial videos is timing and how many episodes and all that other stuff. I don't know if I showed mathf.wrap. In case I didn't, it's basically exactly the same as, because I think I changed it before, but I don't know if I ever showed it. It's just this function right here. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it for the game object. Editor. I know I changed something in here. save configuration file, open project. Oh, here's one I had to add right here. On the open project, we did not have a scripts folder being created. Or it was either that or this audio. I think the audio wasn't being created. It might be the audio and the scripts, but I'm pretty sure the audio as well wasn't being created. Saving the scene, writing transform, writing the class, writing the variable. Okay. So now the big one, the actual code for creating the jar file. So we will start off at the top. I'm not using this or this anymore. I was actually checking out the manifest and seeing how all that was going to work, which is this code right here, and we don't even need that. So I'm just going to get rid of that. I don't know if before we added the export build button, but if not, it's there. File and export build. All right, now here is the export build code for the file menu item M. So if m.name.equals export build, then we're going to create a file chooser. We're going to set the destination to editor.working directory. Then we're going to set the filter using the extension filter, export build, and then jar. That way our export thing says export build at the top. We're only able to view jars or folders. And then cache the result here, and then say if result equals approved. So if we actually clicked on it, then we're going to get the selected file from the file chooser, and then we're going to set the absolute path, and then we're going to say if the path does not end with .jar. So let's say whenever we're exporting it and I want to save the jar file as I don't know, fart or something, I could just type fart. I don't have to type fart.jar. But if I do, it's fine. If I type just fart, it'll add the .jar onto it for me. It's just to make it a little bit easier. And then we're going to try to export the path, and then we're going to catch any kind of exceptions. So here is the export method, and these throw IO exception and URI syntax exception. So now we need to create the jar file. Come on. So we're going to use jar file engine jar equals new jar file, new file, menu.class.get protection domain dot get code source dot get location dot to URI, and that is going to get our jar file. Because how we're doing this is we're basically copying, pasting our current jar file. So if we're in an editor that is built, not inside of the IDE, we are going to copy the jar file that was already created because it's already got all the available stuff in there. It's already got all of our reference material or dependencies. It's already got um, the engine in there. It's already got everything that we need. Well, everything that our project requires to actually run. So we're just going to copy and paste the jar, and then we're just going to add things into it as we're copying the materials over. So that's how this works, and it is passing in the editor as well with the game. It basically just for now we're going to pass the editor in there, but we're just like if you've seen or you have seen the code. I don't know what in the world I'm talking about, but basically what I've already showed you is we're just turning it off. Now, whenever I go to live stream, I'm going to completely remove everything from the editor and the game build so that there's not extra crap just sitting around. Alright, so now that you know how we're doing it, here I'm going to say file f equals new file path, which is the path that we're passing into export. And then f.create new file, so that just creates our file. And then here, this is not really a big thing. This is basically just like if we're debugging, we can see what's going on. So we can actually see it if we run it from the command line, but we won't be able to see it inside of the engine. Later, I'm going to add a progress bar that's going to pop up that will show the current progress and what it's currently doing. But for now, I did not want to mess with all that, so I'm just printing it to the console or printing it to the command line. And then the next thing we need is jar output stream. So jar output stream JOS equals new jar output stream, new file output stream, and then we're going to pass in the file. And then we're going to get enumeration of the jar entries. So that way we can just go through the entire jar and just copy and paste it over. And while there's more entries inside of the jar, then we're going to create the next entry, which is entries.nextElement. And then we're going to get an input stream. So input stream is, or is, engine.jar, or enginejar.get input stream entry. So we're just getting the entry from the previous jar so that we can write it to the new jar. And down here it's jar output stream, or JOS, dot put next new jar entry dot get name, so that way the name is exactly the same, and then we're going to write the bytes, which we will cover in just a second. And as you can tell, I wrote a comment over here. Later, I will remove the editor from the build, but it is not in the scope of the tutorial series, which I've already explained. But I've already got it set up. So as you can tell, while I'm scrolling through the entries, I'm going to get the name of the entry. And if the entry starts with editor, then that's something that involves the editor. So we're just going to skip it, and then or print that we're skipping it, and then continue. But we're not gonna go over all that. I was just showing you that's how that is done. Is just checking the name of the entry and then just skipping it. Okay, let's go to write bytes because we use that quite often. Here is the write bytes method. So it's private static void write bytes input stream is jar output stream JOS. It throws IO exception. So we're just going to need the input stream of the file and then the output stream where we're going to put it at. We've already done this several times before, so this is not anything new. But we're basically just getting a byte array, initializing the bytes read, and then while the bytes read equals is.read buffer does not equal -1, then we're going to write to the jar output stream, and then we're going to close the input stream, flush the jar output stream, and then close the entry. And that's all write bytes does. And then here we're just scrolling through all of the assets that we need to push over to the new jar. So all of this is all the external assets, because right here ends all the internal, the stuff that was in the other jar. All this stuff is new. So it's basically add assets and then pass in the name of the folder. It has to be case sensitive, and then pass in the jar output stream. So let's go over add assets. So add assets. Here, of course, I'm printing the path. So it would say like exporting textures or whatever. Here is the directory. So we have to create a new file of the directory, and then we're going to get a list of all the files in that directory. And then we're going to say if the file, or if files equals null, then we're just going to return out of it. And here we're going to loop through all the files, and then we are going to try to add asset files I, and then pass in the jar output stream, because all these have the same parameters. And then it's catching a file not found exception. And then here I'm just printing a little thing just so that I can see in the command line showing me that whatever file cannot be found. So add asset, it's pretty small. We are going to create a buffered input stream, and then pass in a new file input stream, and then pass in the file. And then we're going to try to put this entry in there. So jar output stream, or JOS dot put next entry, new jar entry, f.getParentFile.getName. So this is going to tell me what folder it's in. And then plus slash plus f.getName. So we're getting the name of the file. And then we're going to write the bytes of that file. And then here, of course, is just another catch saying we couldn't write the bytes for that file. And then after all this, we're going to do all of the assets except for scripts or behaviors. We do not want to add assets scripts. We're going to add behaviors because they have to be done differently. So add behaviors is this method right here. So of course, once again, outputting that I'm exporting behaviors. I'm getting a list of all the behaviors from the editor util. And then I'm going to loop through all of those behaviors. I'm going to get the class for that behavior. And then of course I'm going to get the actual path. So getting the name, I'm replacing the dots with slashes so that we can put them in a folder. And then we're going to add dot class at the end of it. Then we're going to say JOS dot put next entry, new jar entry, and then pass in the path. And then we are going to say c.get class loader dot get resource as stream path. And then we're going to once again call write bytes, pass in the input stream, pass in the jar output stream. And it's pretty straightforward. So now all of our assets are completely written into the new jar file. So now what we need to do is we need to create project settings. Now, like I said, it's just going to be an empty file for now, so I'm just writing some crap in there. That's all I'm doing. So I'm saying jar output stream dot put next entry, new jar entry, and then calling it project.settings. And I'm just writing something in there just for a test. So I'm just putting in some string and then getting the bytes of that stream, or of that string, and then closing the entry for that jar output stream. And then just saying that the export is complete, closing the jar output stream, and then closing the engine jar. This right here is how you print the contents of manifest if you're ever just curious on how you do that. That's what you saw above as well, because I was doing it in multiple locations just to make sure that there wasn't something in there that I needed to change or whatever. So I can remove that. Alright, add asset, add behaviors, write bytes, add assets, bam. That is it for menu bar. And I already went through all of the editor, didn't I? Pretty sure I did. Alright, yeah, I did. Alright, awesome. So that is everything we need to do to export a game jar file. So I will go ahead and do this and show you how it's done. And I'm going to be using command line. You don't have to use command line or command prompt, whatever. I'm just doing it just to show you because, well, that's what we do. So we're going to run it from the IDE first. And here's my little test scene. So I need to, or actually, why am I running it from there? We can't do it from the IDE. All right, so you need to actually build it. So make sure it's going where I need it to go. And this builds the actual runnable engine outside of the IDE. And for you, you would just go to wherever you just saved that at and double click it, and then bam, you're good to go. But for me, just so that we can see the outputs, I will go ahead and run it in command prompt. So in Java, jar desktop slash logic.jar. It's going to run my jar file, and so all of my outputs are going to come up on here. So let's go ahead and begin that. Oh, I had a completely different scene. Whoops. Because I copy and pasted my old scene over to wherever the other path directory is, because every different place that you run it from is going to have a different path directory. So here's the editor. Should work just fine. Yep, everything is running good. Oh, I didn't change the textures either. This has the old textures. See, as you can tell, the alpha gets all screwed up. But whatever, we already discussed that. All right, so I'm going to go to File and then export the build, and then I need a place to put it. So let's go Desktop, and I'm going to say Test Build. And like I said, you can either type it just like this or add.jar. Either way, it'll work just fine. So right now it's exporting all the dependencies like lightweight Java game library, all that crap. And it's probably going to take a minute because I'm recording as well. All right, exported all my assets, and then the export is complete, and then you'll see it change over here. All right, so the game is now exported. So I can just copy that, paste it, and I named it testbuild.jar, and let's run that. As you can tell, no engine bootloader came up, and it's running in full screen without any kind of editors. And everything is working just like it should. I did not have a collider on here, by the way. Just so you know. Man, and with my computer running so slow with all this crap open to it, there's a lot of jitteriness in the collision. But it still works. All right, yeah, so that completely does it. Now, this is the last episode for the series, and I know there is still a lot of things to be admired for the engine. There's a lot of features that still need to be added. There is still a lot of features that need to be upgraded that has not been upgraded or fixed, replaced, whatever. And there's still tons of work to do on that. But like I've said many times before, there's only so much that you can do in a tutorial series. I would be able to run this perfectly and or do this whole tutorial series perfectly without any kind of mistakes or anything like that, and everything coming out perfect all the time without just crazy little or tiny little bugs or whatever. But unless this series was like 700 episodes long, I cannot do that. So that's kind of why some of the things we've just kind of thrown together and just had it work a little or whatever. Some of the things like changing things over here, assets or whatever, like how the save button doesn't work. We have to do that stuff manually if we want to change any of that, stuff like that. But But as for the base engine, everything is just ready to be pounded, ready to have new features, upgraded features, fixed stuff. The whole base part of the engine and the editor is completely done. Some of the things that I'm going to be doing uh, in the live feeds is I need to make the ability to like drag these in and out, make them smaller or larger. I need these save buttons to work. On here, I don't want this to be listed. I want it to like be boxed out or whatever. You know, kind of like this down here. It needs to be boxed out. So it'll show like a picture and then the name underneath it, and then it just laid out all the way across and down like a grid. And I will get to that. It'll be especially useful like whenever we're working with sprites, because right now you can only see the name. That's it. So grass, if you have like 7 different grasses or whatever, you have to like be specific with the name so that you know which one is which. Versus whenever I get that tiling system done, which is really easy, it doesn't take very long to do. You'll actually just see the picture so that it'll be a lot easier to tell which one is which. Yeah, there's tons of stuff that still needs to be done, and I'm 100% going towards. I'm going to also be adding new menu bars. I'm going to be adding a clamping bar up here so that you can tell how many pixels you want to clamp at. So if clamp is set to 0, then there's no clamping. You basically just drag it around. I still need to fix that where it's above that. I can't even drag anything into the scene because we haven't added that. So that's another thing that needs to be done. But so we'll be able to like drag an asset over here, and wherever we drop it, it'll drop on that cursor. But if clamping is set to, let's say 16, that would be like a tiling system. So we could set it to 16 so it snaps to every 16 pixels. Or that 16 pixel grid, wherever our cursor is. So that'll be a lot easier to make levels. So we'll just go snap, 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 snap. Possibly even like painting buttons or something so that we can, if we have this highlighted, say we have grass selected, and then we just come over here and say like the paint tool is open or whatever, I could just click and just drag around. But I don't know how I'm going to do that yet because I don't want to add sprites on top of sprites. So I don't know. We'll figure out how that's gonna work. But that's something that I do want to add because it makes it a lot easier. So let's say all this is going to be grass. We could just select grass and then just drag around, and then I'll just add all the grass instead of dragging and dropping every little one, because that's kind of a pain in the butt. I also need new things in the inspector because we can't view things like rectangles. I'll eventually be adding vector 3s, vector 4s. We still have arrays to be added in there. There's still tons of stuff to do with the editor, and yeah, it's gonna keep on being done. The engine source code will be available for free here really soon. I'm gonna wait just a little bit longer before I put it out on GitHub. Uh, I'll most likely be closing Patreon because, well, the source code will be free, so there's no point in any of that. Uh, yeah, so hopefully I will see you in the live episodes. I'll be recording them and most likely posting them on YouTube. So you can watch and follow along there as well. I won't be talking about hardly anything, just things that we haven't already talked about. But you can watch the progress and see how everything's going from there. And all the source code, of course, is going to be on the screen because, well, I'm programming it. It's live programming sessions. So hopefully I'll see you there, and uh, I'm glad you guys made it this far in the series. All right, see you next time.